So Shea, Pro Tour is around the corner. We haven't produced a tier list. What's up with that?
I'm not sure. We should probably get on everybody else's level and do one. How about we do one today, Felix?
I don't think anyone would trust a tier list that we made for competition.
Probably not. How about we do something different?
All right, so we have our tiers here. In the middle, we have baseline anxiety.
I always feel anxious when I'm judging, always wanting to make sure I'm making appropriate calls.
Absolutely. So we have our middle tier here, baseline anxiety, and a little bit higher we have sweaty palms. Shea, is this just me? Do you get sweaty
No,
palms?
yeah, there's certainly heroes I'm more worried about. Others.
But I'm asking, do your palms physically sweat?
No, my palms do not physically sweat.
All
Do
right.
yours?
Quite badly, I gotta say. It's a bit
Okay.
of a problem. And at the top, fight or flight response. If you see this hero, you have to restrain yourself from fleeing the scene and leaving the call to another judge. Shay,
Yeah.
has this feeling come over you before?
Yes, except there's never another judge for me to run away to.
You're kind of trapped, eh?
Yep.
And toward the bottom, we have a couple tiers here for being very confident, and basically you can handle this hero in your sleep. Do you think anything's gonna end up here?
In the I sleep, maybe. I don't know. Every hero has sort of like their little nuances, so I guess we'll see where we end up with.
All right. We're gonna apply the CC heroes that exist, but some of these heroes have living legended but are still legal in Blitz, so we'll cover those ones as well. First up is Dromai. Shay, where would you put Dromai in this ranking?
I think I would put her in confident. She doesn't have too many crazy interactions. The only ones that have popped up recently that I know of are all the Riptide traps and people trying to understand how Riptide traps or traps and dragons interact.
Mm. So this is interesting because there are quite a few things that people could get wrong when it comes to attacking heroes. Things like Stalagmite, Oldham React, but you feel pretty confident, even though there may be a higher volume of calls, that they're all pretty well understood.
I think so.
Hmm.
How about you?
I don't know. Like, it's interesting because I do see a higher volume of calls for Dromai, a lot of questions about even things like Reckless Swing, Steel Blade Shunt, or even layer step interactions. And just because of the sheer volume of questions, I do have a little bit of anxiety that I'll just drop the ball somewhere.
Yep. So you want to move it up a tier, maybe?
Mm, it just feels weird putting an illusionist below average, you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. So sweaty palms then?
For me, it would be sweaty palms. Maybe for you,
Okay.
being the illusionist player, are confident. Why don't we meet in the middle?
Sure, that's fine. I think that sounds good.
All right. Phi.
I'll let you start with five since I did draw my.
Mm, let's see here. Some mistakes when it comes to playing Belittle and then immediately swinging Ember Blade and making that mistake, leading to some upset players, but pretty easy calls at the
Yeah,
end of
I
the
think so
day.
too.
There's
Yeah.
some. I forgot my Phoenix Flame. That's a pretty common
Yep.
one. Unfortunately, pretty easy call to make.
Too bad, so sad.
Yeah, yeah, it do be like that depending on the REL, of course. What
Yeah.
else?
Trying to think. There's
Mm,
searching. Does he draw extra cards very often?
sometimes mask. I guess
Mass trigger.
maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe misremembering links or skipping over links accidentally. There's a lot of ways Fi can accidentally mess up, I guess.
Lynx doesn't have to be the first hit. It's anything that hits you get to pick, right?
Yeah, yeah, it can be. But just realizing, oops, I should have links, oops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think
Yeah.
of
I think.
anything
I
too
think.
complicated.
No, I don't think so. I think he's fairly straightforward.
Would you put it in confident or I sleep?
Confident. I feel like I sleep is a little
All right. Well, we'll have to
posting.
rebalance this tier list after we're done.
Maybe. Yeah.
All right. Next up, Icelander. Where would you put Icelander?
Um, I think I would probably put her in baseline anxiety or actually confident. I mean, I've played a lot of Icelander, so I'm trying to think of what kind of interactions are confusing. She is a fairly straightforward wizard.
Hmm.
Um, but I am personally very confident, I think, with any questions that somebody would have about Icelander. So I put her in confident.
Got it. No, that's very interesting because again, you have a lot of experience with wizard. I do get a little bit anxious when a wizard is involved in a call. There could be something like confusion about what step a wizard activated instant arcane damage on. Again, thinking about layer step interactions with dragons.
No,
You
I
know.
think that'll come down to more. Kano was probably more complex when we get down there, playing too fast and giving your opponent a chance to respond to stuff. That's gonna really be where I think the confusion comes down to is when there are many activations on the layer step and trying to parse where they are, where people are trying to do things, and what was
Mm-hmm.
resolved, what's about to resolve. And Icelander isn't typically that convoluted. Her play pattern is pretty simple,
Mm-hmm.
even on her Strider's turn, I think.
And the fact that Icelander has been fairly popular, I would say, does help as well because you do get a lot of practice in
Yeah.
in making these calls and being familiar with the cards. It's not like you're too likely to come across a surprise for Icelander compared to Kano or maybe some of the other heroes on this list.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you think she's okay and confident, where would you put her?
I think for me, again, because she was so popular last season and we, or at least I, also understand, or I feel like I understand most of the interactions and where people could get tripped up. I would definitely agree with that. It does feel like we are already going to be making some modifications to the tiers, though, because if Icelander is here, it feels weird to have Phi on the same level. So
Probably on the same level. Yeah.
let's bump down Phi a bit.
Fair enough.
All right, there we go.
So we'll move into the third hero. And I mean, I guess if we're alternating, you get first dibs at the easiest hero.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you put Starvo?
So if I take a call and someone is playing with Starvo, I am immediately saying you are playing with an illegal hero. This is the easiest call I've ever had to make in my life.
And probably the only one you ever have to make about Starvo at this point.
Yeah,
Until Living Legends becomes a format, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I know we said we'd cover some of the heroes in either CC or Blitz, but luckily Starvo does not exist in either right now. And I never want to think about what the game looks like with Starvo legal ever. So let's move on to the next hero
Fair
on our
enough.
list, Azalea. Where would you put Azalea?
Um, let's see. Again, I think a lot of her just pump and throw an attack. I guess there could be some confusion of what's happening prior to playing an attack, like actually attacking your opponent with Skullbone Cross Wrap and Azalea's ability, making sure that the steps that you're taking are very clear to your opponent and you're not just yattering on and flipping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm fairly confident in how I would resolve Azalea issues.
You are such a confident judge.
Play Wizard and Illusionist, man. I'm
You
telling you.
you do play Wizard and Illusionist, that's for sure. I mean, there are some questions like if I Death Dealer in a Sikkim shot, or not a Sikkim shot, if I Death Dealer in Aspire sniping or something that has a when this is placed face up in your arsenal, there could be
Yeah,
that kind of question.
yeah, the Death Dealer versus the
Yeah,
Opt stuff with Eye or Ridge Rider Shot or Spire Sniping, like you said. Yes. Yep.
there's what else? Forgetting on hit effects like oops, read in the ledger hit, but you took multiple actions. Now we rewind? Do we not? That's something that happens.
You like
Oh
this quick
man,
summary?
what are things that could go wrong? Just a lot of opting shenanigans, some card draw, just there is just an increased chance of a game rules violation just because of how mechanical the Azalea deck works. I don't
Yep.
know. I feel a little bit anxious when I see an Azalea making a call.
Are you ever not anxious then, I guess?
I'm always anxious. The baseline for me is this tier here, so I need you
Fair
to
enough.
help me out here. All right, Shay, what do you think? Where should I put this? You think confident?
I
That's
think
fair.
we've talked about it a lot over the past couple of years, even just with Death Dealer into Ridge Rider, Death Dealer into Eye of Ophidia, how these things pan out.
All right. Next we have Bolton. Whose turn is it?
You had Starbo, I had Azalea, so I guess you get to start up on Bolton.
So Bolton, I'm definitely putting in sweaty palms for me because unfamiliarity. You don't see too many Boltons, so I definitely need to be just reading each card carefully in a call, which any judge should do. Even if it's the most familiar interaction to you in the world, just slow down, take your time, read the cards and the heroes that are involved in any interaction. But Bolton has some instant speed shenanigans possible now with the Spirit of Irina. There's a lot of opponents may actually be not so familiar with his package, so you may want to be requesting some rewinds from their opponents, or I don't know. Again, maybe this is just my anxiety talking. What do you feel, Shay?
I think it's kind of fair. You already mentioned Spirit Arena. I think that the combo turn is the most complex piece of him. Getting your action point back from Lumina if you have Spirit out, but I think on a course across the game, understanding how Bolton's hero ability works. I've played against a ton of Bolton playing Grant, and I still read the hero ability just to make sure that I understand that if I do this thing, that you get a +1, that you can give a go again, or how does this work? So I think for the most part, it's going to be a familiarity thing, like you said, and I'm okay with him up at Sweaty Palms. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that his ability relies a little bit on memory as well, that just adds a little bit of complexity because if you've charged in a turn, now for the rest of the turn you need to remember, oh, if I'm blocked by an attack action card, right? Then I give a buff to the attack. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm not even sure. This just
Yeah.
shows how unfamiliar I am with him.
That's why you read the card, like you said.
Yeah, and I'm just worried whenever there's a hero like this that has some reliance on memory and that their opponents may be unfamiliar with. I may see a lot of a lot of calls even where the opponent says, "Hey, I didn't realize it worked like this. Can I get a rewind?" And then we need to evaluate that situation from there. I think that's why I put him a little bit higher up.
Yep, that's fair. And you're right. It's if you've charged your attacks you control get +1 while defended by attack actions.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on there for players to remember. It's like, oh, have you charged? And the turns can get kind of long with Bolton, and he may have broken the chain and all
and
of that.
even declaring blockers and going, oh, I didn't mean to block with an attack.
Yeah.
And how do you remind that? Do you rewind that again? All based on the REL of the event you're in.
Yep. All right. I'm on the board. My anxiety is on the board here.
Excellent.
Next up, we have
Bravo. Where you want it,
Bravo.
right? That's where you want it. You want it on the board.
I just strive for honesty in everything I do. Bravo. Where would you put Bravo?
Trying to think of what he does that's complex. The WTR heroes are fairly, simple baseline. Since it was the first set, I think they were created to be easier to understand. Bro doesn't have a ton of tricks, I don't think. I think I'd be pretty confident. Again, as a not Bravo player, I would have to read every single Bravo card because actually, I would probably put in baseline anxiety now that I think about it because all of Guardian cards have text on it that I would have to read to make sure I understand how the crush effect works or whatever effect the attack is that they're playing, or even the non-attacks. Because what was the craziest thing that I've seen? It was imposing visage into Showtime into I forget what the third card was that my opponent did, and I was like, "What is happening?" And they just pitched a bunch of cards, did a bunch of things, looked in their deck 3 times. I was like, "How does this work?" So yeah,
Imposing,
I
I
think.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Go ahead.
definitely agree with you. Imposing can cause some issues. Even I don't love the way that it's templated. Even with the cost, it could be read as it's X times 3, not X plus 3, and that caused a lot of questions even when that was spoiled. And then about bunch of questions about, oh, does the aura enter the, is it counted as played? Is it not counted as played? Does it just
Right.
enter the arena? So imposing is definitely a challenging card, and one that a lot of Bravos run.
Yeah. But you play a lot of Bravo and Guardian in general.
Used to.
So how, you, so
Used
how
to,
do
at
you
least.
feel about Bravo?
I feel fairly confident. I mean, I'm just trying to think of what other interactions. Honestly, one thing that a lot of Bravos are guilty of is just not having enough seismic surges. You should have 2. one
Yes.
one to represent one that's popped in the turn, and another one to represent one you've created. Um, even
Correct
go
me if I'm
go
wrong.
ahead.
That's for competitive events. It's actually a requirement to have 2 surges, I believe.
I understand that's the requirement as well.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just going back to remembering the crush effects. Spinal crush is actually used as one of the examples of a missed trigger within the penalty guidelines of Flesh and
Yep.
Blood, because it's a common thing that could happen. You could hit your opponent and crush them with a spinal crush, and then both players forget until the opponent has activated 3 things or used 3 actions on their turn. Then oops, judge. So
Yeah.
that's one thing that could be tricky.
Do you, side note, do you have a special way to represent cards that have on hit abilities that have hit? Do you, like, I leave them on the combat chain sideways. So if I hit somebody with a remorseless, I would leave, and it's Seek and Destroy, I would leave it sideways on the combat chain to try and make both of us remember that those on hit effects are active. Do you do something like that?
Yeah, I do as well. I'm all about just having the clearest possible board state, and the last thing I want to do is to have someone make a play in a game based off the fact that they forgot about something like a spinal crush or remorseless or something like that. So I
Yeah.
do something very similar in my games.
So where does Bravo land then? I guess.
So your baseline anxiety, I'm confident. Why don't we put him in confident as well? It just feels
Sure,
so weird
that's
to
fine.
me seeing Icelander down here and putting Bravo above
So do you
Icelander.
think Bravo is more complex than Azalea or less complex?
I think it's very similar to Azalea, and the two heroes have similar pain points, right? When
Yeah.
it comes to judging, again, just those on hits and remembering what they do and what hit and what didn't. To me, they're quite similar in a way.
Fair enough.
Okay,
Move on to Dorinthia.
yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Is it my turn?
I don't know whose turn it is. Go ahead.
All right. So for Dory, I can see a lot of questions when it comes to the reaction step, but I expect most Dory players to be familiar with how reactions work. Um, so I can see having a lot of rules questions, but nothing too complex. I definitely put it in confident because she is another Welcome to Wraith hero. I'm even trying to think of the weirdest things that I've seen with Adori.
So we know like the number one things is the reprise trigger. Does it a trigger?
Mm-hmm.
You have new cards like Iron Song Pride, I guess.
Mm.
Not specifically. That doesn't. It doesn't necessarily apply to Dorinthia because it's pretty straightforward. Did you hit or not? But I know I've had questions surrounding Kasai and
Mm.
Iron Song Pride. Because you apply the buff to a sword,
Mm.
but it doesn't matter which sword hits. It doesn't have to be the sword that has a +1. So I know people have asked about that, and I know Kazai's not necessarily on this list, but
Oh,
um,
that's interesting. I mean, it
yeah, I would say she's pretty confident. Like she's been around for such a long time that we've had
mhm.
time to players have had time to figure her out, especially once they learn that the reaction step reactions are basically instants.
Mhm.
I think that's definitely helped a lot of people. And there hasn't been a ton of warrior cards that have come out that are super crazy.
Yeah, even the good cards on power level like Glint and, like you said, Iron Song Pride still do the same things, essentially, just a little bit better or a little easier to add the counters.
I think maybe her hero interaction was a bit confusing at first, but again, I think she's been out so long that people
Mhm.
just kind of understand the interaction between getting an action point through go again and her hero ability are not tied to each other.
Now, there could be some edge cases where there's some instant speed shenanigans with, for example, her opponent is at 1 and then Shunt gets played, but then there's a further reaction on that, and we're relying on the players at that point to be very, very clear on the stack what has
Yeah.
been resolved and what hasn't. And those calls, if there's a discrepancy between what the players are telling us, then those calls could get very, very messy.
Yep. I think they're pretty niche though for something to line up like that.
Mm-hmm. Just
But
trying to
yeah,
think as well.
agreed.
Axe's Dory, Saber's Dory. I mean, if I see them, I'm gonna have to read every card once again. Hmm.
Yeah, just to make sure you understand the situation fully.
Yeah.
I think somewhere in confident is fine. I think
Yeah.
there's a case for her to be in front of Azalea. There's a case for her to be probably in front of Bravo, but probably not behind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think Bravo's simpler than Dorinthia.
All right. Well, let's organize this like so for now, and we'll see if anything changes as we go further down. I do worry that we are being a little bit overconfident here, but
I
that's
do
just
too.
me. That's just me.
Yeah.
All right, we have Arachne. What do you think, Shay?
I think he could be up in the baseline sweaty palms area. The sneaky assassins doing sneaky things can lead to unclear interactions or processes, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there definitely is some unfamiliarity at play here with Arachne.
Yeah,
They
but I think I was going
go.
to say I've always kind of equated him to be similar to Dorinthia. He's an attack action related hero and looks for the same kind of timing windows, perhaps.
Yeah, that's fair. On the other hand, though, they start to get into different interactions. Even when it comes to things like how do we play the game, if you're flipping the top of your opponent's deck and looking at that card, what if that player accidentally grabs 2 cards? Or what if
Knocks the
the
deck over.
yeah, what if the opponent is
Yeah,
not comfortable with the other player touching their deck and requests to be the one to show, and then there's some questions about if that's being done properly.
yeah.
This is a tough one for me, right? Because the whole contract mechanic is quite new to me, and I'm just wondering. I think theoretically there's a lot of things which could lead to, I guess, calls. I'm just not sure how messy they'll be. I haven't had
Well,
to make such a call myself.
I yeah. Now that you kind of mentioned, I think his calls are going to be more procedure
Mm-hmm.
than mechanically, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. What happens when this person's revealing? They've decided that nope, I don't want you to touch my deck. I'm going to reveal cards for you, and then their opponent's like, they can see the cards they're revealing to me because of the angle they're lifting them at, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be the calls could be skewed that way, maybe, which would be a lot more difficult to assess.
Yeah. And that kind
And
of call is the kind of call I don't like making. It's a lot harder to make those kinds of calls than just, hey, how does X work? How does Y work? I
sweaty,
sweaty palms.
sweaty bombs,
Bolton and Arachne together.
I guess. Not what I envisioned when we started this.
Absolutely. I keep on forgetting whose turn it is, and this is why
I don't think it,
we are
I don't think it matters.
we are novice content creators.
That's right. I think
Briar.
what we could, I think what we could do is whoever's less familiar starts
Mm.
with the hero from here.
Who amongst
So,
us is less familiar with Briar?
I don't know. I used to play Briar
Okay, have at it.
back in the Tails days. So that would make you the starter on this one.
Oh yeah, how about that? I,
Baited.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see, Briar. I mean, a lot of mistriggers for creating the embodiment of lightning. Requests
Yep.
for rewinds.
Same
Um,
with both. Well, both embodiments.
that's true. That's true. And even calls like, hey, I missed the trigger for the first embodiment of Earth creation, but I did damage again. Can I create it the second time around? There's, yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
mistrigger questions for
Yep.
Briar.
Ball lightning questions.
Again, if I get any ball lightning questions, I'm gonna have a very easy time responding to
Yeah.
those. What else? I mean, there's some pretty simple ones, right? Like, does Bramble Spark create an embodiment of Earth, or what else? Just the typical on hit versus on damage types of
Yeah.
questions. So yeah, I think again the fact that Briar's been so popular for so long has led to a certain amount of confidence. Even though again the volume of calls may be a little bit higher, that there could be an increased chance of even mathematical errors happening because Briar has so many plus ones. For example, there's a on the defending side, oops, I counted the plus one on the embodiment on an attack accidentally, or I didn't add up the numbers on all these buffs on my channel mount heroic turn.
Yeah.
I think yeah that could cause some complication, and yeah those calls related to game rules violations or mistakes that players are making are more challenging. I had a very challenging situation in Indianapolis actually related to incorrect math essentially. Don't want to get into the specifics, but yeah, it can get quite messy and lead to some frustrations amongst the players. So I
Right.
think because of that, I would put her into baseline anxiety, despite the fact that I feel quite confident in making each ruling. I am a little bit worried just about accidental game rules violations from the players.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that. I think I agree with you.
All right. So, who amongst us is less familiar with Oldham?
That was me.
All
I've
right,
never played him
let's
outside of
go.
draft.
Let's go.
Um, yeah. He Crown of Seeds, man.
Yeah.
Uh, Stalagmite. Did you put a counter on your shield? Did you give a frostbite? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Earth react, ice react. I think he can be. I think he can be complicated. I
Mm-hmm.
can definitely see some questions arising on timing stuff, timing windows. If you prematurely do something or whatnot.
Mm.
Not is it Awakening? No, it's not Awakening. It's Endless Winter. Yeah, that's a great card.
Oh,
I have to read that like 1,000 times.
it that is a dense
Uh,
card. There's a lot of text on Endless Winter.
yeah, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Oh yeah.
I would probably personally would put him up in the Sweaty Palms because I haven't played him, and our Oldhim player base is pretty slim right now, so I haven't had a ton of crazy interactions or games with him. So I think, yeah, the card I'm worried about the most is Endless Winter.
That is all very fair. And I'd like to just add to that slow play calls for Oldhim. Now I know any hero can be accused of slow play, but stereotypically that would be Oldhim, and man, you do not want to be making those subjective calls. That is again not the fun calls to make. And I would definitely support Oldhim being in Sweaty Palms. There is just also Vambraces now existing as a counter to Oldhim, and
Right.
it's sometimes not intuitive how that interacts with Oldham's floating 2 prevention from Earth React. I
Right.
I would definitely put Oldham in Sweaty Palms.
Yeah,
completely
that's fair.
support that.
I didn't even think about the interaction between fan braces and the Earth React. The talk was always surrounding Crown.
All right, next Prism.
But we're
I
both fairly
I am
experienced.
definitely less experienced than you. You are an event winner with Prism. I am just a dabbler, but Prism. If any hero is going in the top tier, it is Prism here, and
Yeah.
I cannot be talked down from this position.
Yeah, There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions. It's obviously Spectra is the biggest
Yep.
culprit in this conversation.
Even things like Crown of Reflection existing, as if Prism wasn't complicated enough. The fact that you can't retroactively remove a Phantasm trigger, the fact that, oh boy, I'm suffering from PTSD right now. Not even from getting farmed by Prism as Oldham, but just making Prism calls. You've had to judge how many events with Prism Legal.
Oh man, you put me on the spot. I have no idea.
Oh, multiple
Uh,
multiple CC
at
events.
least two, but it's even more than that. It's armories, it's
Yeah,
RTNs, PQs, maybe Qs.
yeah,
Because there's also like there's the standard way you play Prism with auras and Phantasm attacks, but then there's people that are like, I'm gonna play the buffs and I'm gonna remove Phantasm and I'm gonna so that don't get used a lot.
yeah,
And there's questions surrounding stuff like veiled intentions. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
And
I think she's easily the most difficult hero to make sure that she's being played correctly and straight.
yep, you could make a judge exam or at least a judge quiz based on fractal replication by itself. If anyone
Yeah,
asks you if you phantasm if you phantasmify an enlightened strike and then fractal replication, what happens?
yeah. What happens? Yeah, yeah.
Someone's probably trying to copy your answer on the judge exam, so don't answer that question. Just think about it.
Yeah,
Just think about
yeah.
it. All right. Kano. Have you played Kano?
I've played Kano a little bit.
What do you think?
I think he's. I mean, he's a wizard. He's the first wizard. He's the most complex wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, for most of the game, he's fairly straightforward. I think. Um, but they're definitely even before the pop off turn, as the way he's being played now. Um, he'll do Kano stuff on your turn
Mm-hmm.
and sequencing two Kano triggers before resolving them. Lots of layer step stuff. So
Yeah.
I think Kano could fit in the flight or fight response. If you're not too familiar with Wizard.
Yeah. I can see that. At the same time, the people that are crazy slash smart enough to play Kano tend to always know exactly what they're doing and are very, very clear with what windows are happening. So
Yeah,
I don't get the same sense of dread and confusion and chaos as Prism if I just see a Kano involved in a call. Or
yeah,
maybe
fair.
maybe I'm biased
Well,
because our local
I
Kano
was gonna say
players are
though, you
very,
as a judge have
very
to decipher
that's
the
true.
confidence, between somebody that's confident and whether or not what they're talking about is right.
Right.
Because people, I mean, everybody makes mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe people are doing something wrong, which is why you have to read the cards and to try and understand the situation that is being discussed to you and where everybody stands.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's as complicated. Again, he's been around longer
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, so I don't think he's as complicated as like Prism, but like he's somewhere up there.
Yep. All right. Fight or flight.
Sure.
I've been convinced. Katsu.
Have you?
Katsu. I can take a stab at this one. There's he's fairly face up, I think. I'm trying to think. There's some pretty weird stuff with the is it Heron's Flight? That line.
Who
Um,
plays that?
you never know, man. You never know.
I was thinking that he is kind of a little bit more complex with the bonds than Descendant Gust Wave stuff now.
mm,
Because I've definitely had Katsu's being like, I'm playing this and into this, into that, and I'm gonna go search for stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And then there's also calls that you could get as a judge when their opponent asks, "Hey, can you read me what the card is that combos off of this?" And
Right.
you have to navigate that situation of, do you provide this information, do you not? That could get kind of complex. What do you think? Confident next to the other
Nope.
Welcome to Wraith heroes?
I
Up?
think he's higher than that. I think he's
Higher?
baseline. I think because he's new
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
like, and with the Outsiders release, I think I would put him somewhere in the baseline area.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't have too much exposure with the brand new cards in a
Yeah.
CC context at least, so
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay.
Into
Lexi.
Lexi.
I think I've played a little more Lexi than you.
I
What do
think
you
so,
think?
probably.
What do you think?
Again, it's gonna be. I think what is so on hits. There's a variety of ways to play her, so there's a lot of information to retain on how Lexi can be played.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you're flipping cards. When can you flip cards? Did you use Lexi once or twice in a turn? On hits, Art of War,
Or three of a kind turn. I accidentally
three
played
of a kind
something
turns.
from hand. I've seen that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Other than that, you get the channel like Frigid flow counter thing, as well as like Briar and Icelander.
Mm-hmm.
Flow counters, get an instant bow.
I will say it was a little more complicated when people were playing Channel the Bleak Expanse, I think, right as Uprising was new. Because then we got a lot of questions. Does using Lexi's ability count as a reveal? What am I not allowed to do because of Bleak Expanse? Now that
Yeah.
that's not as much of a thing, I'm seeing, of course, a lot fewer of those questions.
Yeah, I think she's probably confident.
No problems there.
I don't know. What do you, yeah, you're okay with that?
Oh yeah, dash.
She's gonna be.
Oh,
We're gonna. Sorry, we're gonna also probably figure her out a lot more in the next little bit, as she
yes.
seems to be one of the go-to heroes for meta picks right now.
Let's move on to dash here.
I also have very little dash experience,
I've
but
dabbled.
being one of the original heroes, I think it's less complicated. Keeping track of resources, action points, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Spark of Genius, double X, cost.
I think there's a very high chance, or not, I don't want to say a high chance, but there's so much happening on Dash's board, the Steam counters, the items. There's a higher chance of the board state being unclear or accidentally knocking counters over onto other
Yep.
things, accidentally forgetting to remove Steam counters when you should. I'd say the possibility of a games rule violation could be higher for Dash.
Yeah. Yep. But other than that, she's not too complicated.
What do you think?
So, man, as far as making an actual call, I'd probably have baseline anxiety.
Yep.
Because these are one of those not necessarily. There's an answer for this specific situation,
Mm-hmm.
and there might, but it could be something that you yourself as a judge have to make a call. If I was making a call in that regard, I would probably put her in the baseline anxiety tier for me.
All right. That makes sense. Chain. You played Chain.
I played Chain. It
I
doesn't count anymore.
the,
So
the first time I met you, actually, I think you were playing Chain. It's probably a weird build though.
maybe, I don't know. Maybe I played weird builds. I'm not known for that.
Look, we ranked Prism, so we have to rank Chain. Where's Chain here?
Sweaty Palms. Like if he was in, I mean, I guess you can see him in Blitz, but I would Sweaty Palms, banishing cards through shackles, creepers, interactions. He has a lot of complex lines of play, gaining action points with the creepers, breaking the chain. So there's a lot of stuff going on with Chain himself. So I think Sweaty Palms. Even though we've played him a bit and he's been around for a long time, I still think that he's one of the hardest heroes to sequence. Therefore, has a lot of room for a player to make a play that they don't necessarily intend to, and then asking for rewind or wanting to redo something. Yeah,
the classic activate Chain, then play Howl from Beyond.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, judge, can I take that back? Yeah, it's
Only if your opponent lets you.
we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What do you
no,
think?
I can definitely see that. There's other questions. I mean, mutated mass is a card that confuses me every time I see it.
Yeah.
Um, what about, yeah, questions about snag that people were using to counter chain back in the day? Had a lot of questions. I don't think that's too much of a thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Sweaty Palms again if we ran into him in Blitz and, for example, the World Championship was a triple format tournament. Definitely the unfamiliarity at this point would lead to some increased anxiety. So yeah, I totally agree with Sweaty Palms there.
Sure.
Riptide, you
Riptide.
you're playing Riptide right now.
I am trying to play Riptide right now.
Yeah, I'm.
Just in Blitz at the moment.
Yeah,
Um, CC, I don't know how you close games out in CC with him.
yeah,
So, but he's a baseline anxiety, I think, right now. Again, as a new hero, and going back to the Dromine scenario, how do traps interact with dragons is a hotly talked about topic in the Riptide Discord at this
yep.
time. Just people trying to figure out where things trigger, do they trigger, if they trigger, what's the effect. Because sometimes when a trap triggers, it's not even actually doing anything. Yeah, it's triggering, but it doesn't do anything. And there's a cool little chart that somebody made up in that Discord for dragons versus traps. So definitely go find that.
Understood. I would bump it up to Sweaty Palms because he's new, and I've heard some pretty cool questions about, for example, if Riptide plays Collapsing Bridge, is that the name of the card?
Collapsing trap.
Collapsing Trap, right? And can you respond to that before he takes the cards from your hand with another instant? And where does his triggered ability?
Where's the damage?
Yep,
Yeah.
there's some questions like that. There's some pretty complex interactions, or I don't want to say complex, but they involve multiple triggers. And anytime that happens and it's a new hero, even the players could get a little bit confused and accidentally get into a game rules violation situation, which could become complex to rewind. So
Yeah.
I'd bump him up a little bit because of that
Yeah.
interaction.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. Azuri, what do you think?
Easily starts in Sweaty Palms.
Oh yeah. And we've seen the unfortunate consequences of just forgetting about dominate with isolate and all the different reaction step shenanigans. It can lead to some tricky situations.
And even in the beginning, when you Azuri in a card, what does that mean for the played effect or the cost of playing a card?
Mm-hmm.
I know we have some of that ironed out now, but still, though, like I still am not always sure necessarily when I have a question surrounding what happens, what can you do, gore belching in Azuri's ability, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And again, the fact that she's new, we don't have as much experience in them or with playing with her. I definitely do feel a little bit more anxious whenever there isn't that experience to lean on. So sweaty palms.
Sweaty palms.
All right, Reinar, are we gonna put him next to Bravo and Dorinthia?
Yeah, I think he falls down into Bravo and Dorinthia territory. Again, old school hero, hasn't had a lot of support. He just kind of does the same thing. There isn't anything tricky about him. It's pretty much face up on the table when he intimidates you. You can't block.
There are a couple things that do give me a little bit of pause for Reinar. Things like, pardon me?
Beast Within.
Yep, Beast Within, and how that relates to something like Blood Rush Bellow. And there's even that new card, the one that, gosh, I forget, the one that cycles a card or banishes a card automatically when it's put into graveyard. And does that count as discarded?
Oh, is that Reincarnate?
Maybe. Now
I don't know.
my
I'm
lack
not
of
I'm not a
familiarity.
Reinar player. Okay, all right. Well, not as baseline anxiety. Easy.
Yep, exactly. So I think if I were presented with the cards face up to make a call, I'm fairly certain I would make the correct call. But just again, that
Yeah.
unfamiliarity and knowing that those interactions exist with Reinar does
Yep.
give me some anxiety.
Yep. That's fair.
All right. Viserai. You are Mr. Viserai, so I am less familiar. When I think of Viserai, I think of a lot of potential for missed triggers. As the Viserai, oops, forgot to create rune chants here and there.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the rules for missed beneficial trigger, if you have to call a judge, are pretty straightforward. A lot of
Sure.
math, right? When you take into account things like Mordred and creepers and all the possibilities, just a lot of possibility to mess something up, and creating rune chants on the back end of an attack action card.
Do rune chants go with the attack?
Mm-hmm.
Attacking with rune chants into Spectra.
Yeah,
Again, we've had a lot of time to iron this out,
we have.
but there's still some tricky stuff with him for maybe people that don't have a lot of experience with Viserai because he's not popular right now. So any new
Mm-hmm.
judges not be super familiar with some of these interactions with Prism and Viserai, like not really being able to see each other
Mm-hmm.
because they're LL'd in opposite formats.
Right.
So it's not something that you necessarily need to talk about as much anymore.
Also, cards like Dread Triptych and their interaction with rune chants. Some players don't know if you allow
Yeah.
the arcane from rune chant to hit, is I forget which mode of Dread Triptych turned on, and same thing with something like Meet and Greet or Consuming Volition. I can see a lot of questions from players
Yep.
just about stuff like that, and of
Well,
course,
the interesting thing
go
about
ahead.
those cards is the thought pattern is almost always wrong by the players.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't count, but
Mm-hmm.
in fact it does because of layering and arcane hitting before attacks resolve.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so totally I can see that.
What do you think?
So
Baseline anxiety.
I'm fairly confident, but I would, I think he could be in baseline anxiety because
Yeah,
he's still got some complexity to him.
yeah. Feels weird to put him next to Bravo and all that. I
Fair.
definitely put him there. Okay, well, last but not least, Levia. What do you think?
Uh, man, do we have very little Levia action here? But I feel like a lot of her stuff is straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Did you banish a 6 or not? Are you taking blood debt? I guess if they're using the Ravenous Meat Axe, there's a little bit there's a discard mechanic there or
Mm-hmm.
something, so maybe it's not that bad. Not really sure. I don't know a ton about Levia.
Yeah, again, I think similar to Arachne, strangely, I I get a little bit of anxiety when I think about how are they gonna pick the banished. Are there marked cards? Is
Yeah.
the method of selection of these random cards sufficiently random? Um, Stuff like that is what I think of, and of course, there's still the potential of things like Beast Within questions with Blood Rush. How does Plasmafed work? Do you actually know? I have no
No.
idea how Plasmafed works.
No. I don't.
I'd
I don't
have to
think he's
read
I
that.
don't think he's that I don't think he's that complicated though.
Yeah,
Um,
I just have to read it.
yeah. Yeah, we could probably figure out Levia based on reading the cards. Maybe you're not super confident sitting here without the interaction or the question in front of you, but being able to read it, I think we could figure it out.
Yeah,
But probably more complex than Reinar because of the aforementioned instances.
yeah. Baseline
So I guess
anxiety,
that
or
puts her in baseline anxiety in front of Reinar somewhere.
man, I hope we're not scrutinizing the order within the tiers too much. I don't think
No, I don't
it's
think
that
so.
accurate.
I don't think it's micro decisions, and this is a
Yep.
very serious tier list.
This is very
Right, Felix?
serious. Yep,
Very serious.
very serious. All right.
It's an interesting exercise to think about, though, because when you had prompted this idea to me earlier, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I don't know how this is going to go. And I think every hero can put a judge in a bind where they
Oh yeah.
don't necessarily know because they're not familiar with this niche scenario. How quickly and how easily can you find an appropriate answer for your players?
I mean, caveat every hero here except for Starvo.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's about it. Any closing thoughts here before we wrap up?
No,
You
I don't
already
have
said it
anything.
all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for anyone that's still with us here, we've been rambling on for almost an hour. We appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Our socials are up on the screen right now, and can't wait to hear from you. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.